Hi guys, it's Ernest from Proximal Consciousness. How you guys doing today? Got a great subject for you. Obesity. Felt that this would be something great to touch on because in our society nowadays, being overweight is a very, very big problem for most men and women, especially as they age, right? So in talking about this subject, I had to go back to the basics, right? I had to say, well, why is it that men and women eat? And the answer is that, well, the answer should be anyway, that they eat to survive. They eat the proper amount of food with the proper amount of nutrition so that they can stay healthy and so that they won't starve to death. But as our society today, rarely, I mean, people pay attention to those things, but more or less they eat because they just like the food. The eating is become more of an emotional thing instead of an avoiding starvational thing. So I said to myself, in order to deal with the problem of obesity, we have to retrain people on how to think about food. We need to get back to the basics. We need to get back to understanding what quantity of food we need to eat in order to have a healthy body, right? And then once we've identified the proper quantity of food to eat, then we need to eat that quantity of food only when we need to eat it and not when we just feel hungry or feel like eating. So whenever we look at food, we need to say, well, am I going to starve if I don't eat this? And the answer is probably in most cases, no, you're not going to starve. And then we need to look at that quantity of food and say, well, if I eat this amount, am I going to be hungry? You could probably cut your food in half, everything that you eat, and eat it at that moment, and you still probably would not be hungry afterward. But there are people who never do that. There are people who will fill their bowls full of cereal or will fill their plate full of food with the idea of not starving or the idea of not being hungry afterward, and they would eat everything on their plate and then some, not realizing that they could only have eaten a quarter of that and they would not be hungry afterward. So that's the problem that people are having. It's how they view food. You know, people are no longer viewing food as merely something to eat that prevents them from starving. Now we see how these movies on television about people trapped in the desert or the jungle, and they're hungry, and they're sipping on a drop of water from a bottle, or they got it rains and they got a leaf with some fresh water on it, and they're getting the dew from the leaf, and they're living, right? And yet nowadays you got people who can drink a liter of soda and say, well, they were thirsty. Whereas these people in the jungles or in the deserts can live off a leaf. So, I mean, that's the logic behind it all. I mean, why in the world why have we become so dependent upon eating a huge quantity of food in order to survive? When all we need is, let's say, drink off a leaf and a few berries, a few figs. So I thought I would talk about that because it's such a big deal, right? I thought I would address the emotional baggage that we as people are having about food, the trip that we're on when it comes to dealing with food. I mean, we are loving our food. People are loving their food, when in fact we should merely be eating, merely to not starve. And the quantity of food that we should be eating is just a large enough quantity to get the nutrition that we need to have a healthy body. Right? And this is not just a problem of the older people. This is a problem of young children. This is a problem of middle-aged people. It's a problem of people who are aging. It's not just a man's issue, it's a female's issue. You know, people are having a serious struggle with food because they just do not take the time to sit down and think about it logically. They don't play around with the idea, you know? They don't play in the kitchen and say, well, let me put this little bit amount on a plate and see how my body responds. You know, they don't get down to the bare basics to see what they really need. They don't really think about the nutritional value of what they put on a plate anymore. It's just whatever they were raised with, whatever they came along, whatever they discovered in the course of living, right? And when it comes to why they eat, they don't really know why they eat. They just eat when they feel like eating. It's just there. Some people just eat in the passing. It's habitual. It's just the way it is. It's the way they were raised. No one ever told them not to. You know, when you were young, your parents were cooking dinner, and you wanted to eat before dinner was ready. You wanted to go and snack and this, that, and the other, and your parents tell you, well, you're not starving. But they tell you that, but then they turn around and what? And they give you a snack. They give you way more than a snack. It's just something that they do, right? They never really consciously care about any of what's being said anymore. You know, if the parents had just said, you know, you're not starving, this is why you shouldn't begin to eat before dinner, or this is why you should care about this because at some point in time you may become obese. But they don't go that far. Most parents just stop at, well, you're not going to starve to death. But if they took the moment to straighten out the thinking patterns of their children, then maybe their children would reach adulthood and have better habits when it comes to selecting and eating a quantity of food in order to survive. Right? There would be no obesity problems in the world if we just straightened out the thinking of those people who basically need help in that area. So that's my thought for the day, you guys. You know, that people should become a little bit more objective about eating so that they don't run the risk of becoming obese and all the other problems that comes along with that, whether it's fashion or whether it's their health or whether it's psychological, emotional, whatever it may be, the aftermaths of falling to such a problem. So I hope you guys like the subject matter. I hope you like my video, and I hope you're subscribing to my channel. And I look forward to talking to you guys about other subject matters in the future. So have a good day, guys. Bye now.